The question is asked, the ring is presented, and you say yes. There is an undeniable rush of joy and relief that comes with a second proposal, the validation of finding love again when you might not have expected to. Almost instantly, that emotional high triggers a reflex. You want to start looking at venues, browsing dress silhouettes, and picking out color palettes to make the celebration perfect. Unresolved baggage from a first marriage poses the single greatest threat to longevity of the second. This chart illustrates the scale of the situation. Look at the primary bar. 42 million U.S. adults have married more than once. Now look at the secondary data point right next to it. The failure rate of second marriages is notoriously high and often collapses faster than the first. Statistical failure rates climb when the focus remains on the visible milestones of a wedding ceremony rather than the structural health of the marriage itself. Securing a successful second marriage requires you to actively hit the brakes on the celebration. You have to pause the vendor calls and conduct a rigorous, honest check of your own emotional reality. To guide women through this specific process, Dr. Georgianne Thomas authored Guide to the Second-Time Bride. Her central thesis is direct. True preparation means prioritizing personal healing and introspection long before you finalize a guest list or mail an invitation. Many second-time brides face deep emotional confusion. They are trying to untangle the hurt and habits of their past relationship while simultaneously trying to build a future with someone entirely new. To cut through that confusion, Dr. Thomas provides a specific diagnostic tool, the remarriage maze. Successfully navigating this maze requires a severe trade-off. You must sacrifice the immediate gratification of wedding planning to engage in deeply uncomfortable introspection. Looking at this diagram, you must define your entry point, divorced or widowed. Acknowledging how your previous marriage ended is non-negotiable. Ignoring this routes you into dead ends like acute anxiety or financial strain. Early in this process, Dr. Thomas introduces the Remarriage Litmus Survey. It acts as a required input to thoroughly evaluate your core motivations for saying "I do" a second time. The outcome of this survey is often stark. It uncovers whether a bride is truly prepared for a lifelong commitment, or if she is simply running from the discomfort of being alone. Taking this survey forces a level of self-reflection that will inevitably delay your exciting wedding timeline. The friction at the very first step of this maze proves a critical point. Rushing to the altar usually masks unresolved core issues, and those hidden issues will eventually sabotage the new union. Once the internal audit is underway, the focus must shift to the external actors who are inevitably brought into a second marriage. Couples must map new dynamics, coordinate children from prior relationships, and establish new household routines. They also have to tackle the critical and frequently avoided task of managing relationships with former in-laws alongside the integration of their new in-laws. Putting in this effort establishes firm boundaries early on. It prevents external family drama from fracturing the foundation of the new couple. The trade-off here is obvious. Initiating these high-friction conversations with your partner threatens to shatter the blissful illusion of the honeymoon phase. A durable second marriage requires a strategic integration of past familial ties into the new reality. Dr. Thomas draws a sharp comparison between the end of a marriage and postpartum recovery. After giving birth, the body and mind require dedicated, isolated time to heal, and a divorce or loss demands the exact same grace period. The time spent between your first marriage and your new engagement must be carefully audited. You have to ask yourself if actual healing occurred during that gap, or if the time was merely spent on distractions. This diagram shows what successful healing looks like within the framework. An unbroken path requires passing through positive nodes, like reaching a stable emotional level and ensuring self-goals achieved, before finally arriving at the remarriage exit. Throughout this specific recovery process, the author asserts that spiritual faith acts as a vital, central anchor to process past trauma. The ultimate trade-off is accepting responsibility. You have to do the solitary, often painful work of self-improvement, rather than unfairly expecting your new partner to step in and fix your past injuries. You cannot build a healthy, lifelong union on a foundation of unhealed trauma. Absolute self-sufficiency must precede the new commitment. This matrix synthesizes the two mindsets competing for a bride's attention. We are comparing what it means to be ready for the wedding against being ready for remarriage, across focus, timeline, and conflict avoidance. The wedding mindset is entirely external. It operates on an immediate, rushed timeline, and it carries a high desire to avoid any conflict that might ruin the celebratory mood. By contrast, the remarriage mindset has a deeply internal focus. It relies on a paced and patient timeline, and it exhibits a low avoidance of the necessary conflicts required to build a solid foundation. The defining rule for the second-time bride: logistical event planning must be entirely subservient to psychological preparation. This entire evaluation framework maps perfectly to the anxious pragmatist. This is the bride genuinely excited for her future, but terrified of repeating past mistakes. Working through Dr. Thomas's maze yields the exact tangible checklist she needs. It replaces broad anxiety with structured confidence. Conversely, this process is not for brides solely looking for traditional event logistics, nor is it for those unwilling to confront the painful reality of a previous divorce. Prioritizing this evaluation over celebratory planning builds the stability needed for a relationship to survive its first decade. Achieving true emotional readiness is the most difficult work a bride can do, but it is the highest leverage investment she can make to secure her second chance at a lifelong commitment.